All right. After a sweet little welcome. I'm so excited to discuss this book today because this book has honestly, every time that I've read it, brought so much beauty into my life and so much clarity. And it seems like every time I read this book, there's for every archetype, something different is popping up in my life, in my growth, I can really recognize myself in all of these goddesses, and it really gives me shivers. It brings me clarity. It gives me power. It brings me tears. It's just been so, so healing. So yeah, I would love to hear about your experience of reading this, and also just take you through like the different kinds of goddesses. And I'll already like say how it, for example, has shifted in my life. Or like how I gain clarity in my life. And then, the invite is to you, like, to see how that applies to your life. So yeah, Sophie Bashford goes over these different archetypes, and every archetype is a goddess that we can embody and that can help us move through a certain situation in our life. And so she starts with Kali, which is the goddess of transformation. It's the goddess of the rebirth, of like death and rebirth, of the phoenix rising from the ashes. It's the one who is like making sure that you're the one who is supporting you in the difficult times, because oftentimes Kali is seen as a goddess of destruction, because yeah, there is a lot of death or destruction in your life when Kali is visiting you, but that means that you're just getting ready to be reborn. And so this is a natural cycle of life, and we all need this, like, that in order to grow, you need to let go of certain other parts of yourself. And so to be faced with those parts is usually like the toughest moments in your life. And then you overcome them and you feel reborn, and you get out of that cycle again. But going through like the dark times when you feel like, oh my God, I'm not feeling my strongest self, like what I've been feeling lately with going through this health detox, it's like I'm not feeling my sexiest self, I'm not feeling my most confident self, I'm not feeling my so many things that I was experiencing. And yeah, with arriving in Bali and now reading this book again, I was like, oh yeah, of course, it's my death and rebirth process. And even though I knew it when it was happening, I knew there was like some light at the end of the tunnel, and like it was impossible for life to stay like this. It's always up and down. But yeah, reading about Kali gave me more insight into, oh yeah, of course, like going through this cleanse and really resetting my health and having all kinds of symptoms, having acne, having fevers. It was preparing me to like step out into the light again, and where I'm at right now, which I'm very grateful for, but it's like this reinvention of yourself. And yeah, so for me at the moment, that's what I've just been going through with this detox, and it's been intense. And like I've really noticed it, like life isn't always just like happy sunshine, and but it's how you deal with yourself in those tough moments. Do you have compassion for yourself? Or like, that's how I noticed that I've really grown, because those tough moments still happen, but I'm so much softer for myself. I'm so much more compassionate, and I'm so much, I'm not like getting stuck in a mindset, because I'm like nurturing myself. And that's when we come to Mother Mary, and she stands for unconditional love and emotional healing, and, a compassionate witness, or listening and crying as well. So you have all of these emotions, and how are you experiencing them, or how are you processing them? So a lot of times when, for example, I would go through a period in the past that I was feeling bad, I wouldn't communicate about it, or I wouldn't release any of that. I would just like keep pushing things down, while even just reading this and it has softened me up to cry again, and like my partner has left, Ben has left to Thailand for a few weeks. And it was so nice to just be in my own space and create softness for myself, and to create time to actually be with my emotions, to not run away from it. As I also noticed with the cleanse, like how food was a distraction dealing with emotions or what's coming up in a moment. And, you know, even if it's just like boredom, it's this like, it gives you spaciousness to deal with the things that are underneath. And then so Mother Mary creates that softness in yeah, to be able to let you cry. Mm-hmm. And then would you rather have me explain my experience of all of them, and then we then pick on like, I'll ask you some questions after, or you already feel like you have some insights that you want to share?
Yeah, I wanted to touch on Kali. Like I remember, so I read the book a while back, and then I just kind of refreshed my memory recently with the opening the book with Kali, and like how you said, it's just the way Sophie expresses is just the way you're like, she's like in my head. And how I saw Kali as like, it's like when situations feel like the rug is taken out. How do they say, like the rug is taken underneath your feet?
Underneath your feet, yeah.
And it's in situations where it's almost like she said it, there was something that was like, it's like when something can be speaking to our ego but not our soul, and it's comforting because it's like comforting our soul, our ego, but not necessarily our soul. Yeah. And that when it seems almost like life is against you, right? But it's really like that life really has a higher plan for you, and like embodying your Kali power like allows you to see it like past like what is really like uncomfortable, you know, knowing that like the universe knows like what you need. And when we're stripped away from our security, you know what I mean, like for you, like you're saying about like maybe like what was going on health wise and whatnot, it's like, yeah, but when you get past that, then you're really free, right? We think we're free with like what we think we're living, you know, or just like it challenges in a way where like it really takes us to another level of freedom and inner peace. So I really like that, because it's like remembering when like it's just life seems so hard, or like something just doesn't make sense, and you're like, why would this happen? It's just like going back to that trust. It's like, wow, like I'm being taken care of, right? Mm-hmm. And how you say it's like a rebirth. So at the other side, no matter how painful, there's a rebirth. So
yeah, totally.
Yeah,
I love it that you said also like that it's the ego versus what is good for you, you know, and that's the resistance often, because you're like, no, I don't want this, but then you just get overwhelmed and you just get taken into this rush of like of depth and of destruction, you know. But then eventually you know that it's the best for you. Even you experience this with like a heartbreak, you know, when the breakup is so painful, but then afterwards you see like how valuable that period was for you to like actually reinvent yourself and to come back to like your own values, or to like to figure out what was actually important to you.
Yeah, because I feel like what we want is what's on the other side of like the shit show. You know, like that's what our mind wants. It's like, I want peace, I want love, I want this, I want comfort. It's like, well, yeah, well, life is going to take away absolutely everything that's getting in the way, but all those things are your comfort zone, you know? So it's like taking that out, but knowing that on the other side, you are getting exactly what you're asking for. It's just a way to get there. It's like what we don't know, like we don't know the best way to get there.
Yeah.
But life does.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because otherwise we'd be like scared, or we'd be pushing, just resisting getting there, or we wouldn't get there because we resisted with the ego.
Yeah, and we're like living in a comfort zone, like we would be living exactly as we are, you know.
Amazing. Yeah. And then after Mother Mary, there's Kuan Yin, and she stands for love and value of your body. And that's a big one for me as well, because I know that, you know, like now, even with this detox coming up and me having so much acne, just feeling as if I couldn't do any sports in the past like few months, with a broken arm and broken ribs. And I've been like shifting out of that even the past few weeks by shifting my mindset about it and just being like, okay, no, doesn't matter. My skin is beautiful. I love my body, you know, and not trying to force so many things. And like, I know that the first time that I read this book, it was such a big chapter for me, because I know that I've been so harsh on my body. And then also how she talks about how this is in the general consciousness of women around the world, you know, and young girls growing up with it. And I know how tough it has been for me to like break free from those thought patterns and like this self-destructive behavior of like just putting myself down, not honoring my body and being harsh on myself. And it's such a sad thing to know that this is still happening and girls are still growing up with this, maybe even more, you know, because you have even more like social media and you have even more like face filters and, you know, like everything what they grow up with isn't, you know, isn't realistic. So it's such a tough one to live up to, you know. And yeah, I've been crying the first time I read this chapter because I know I always used to think that I was too fat, for example, you know, and like it creates issues in how I show up in the world and how I can actually contribute to the world. It stops women, you know, and like even with aging, it's like I'm turning 30 this week, by the way.
Yay!
And it just doesn't matter how old you are if you value what you have inside. But it's such a shame that even in general society, like in society, there's still so much value put on staying, you know, looking perfect and staying young, and not for health purposes, but for also, you know, physical purposes. And if you look around now, and so many women are doing plastic surgery and like changing their beautiful faces, and like it's not going to solve the problem. We need to solve the problem from within, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And for me, like what came up was like, am I gonna live all my life like going against what is reality and what is me? Like if I'm trying to fight my age right now, like the only one that's struggling is myself. You know, if I'm convincing myself like worried about am I getting older? Am I looking this way? I'm like the only one that is suffering is me and like my mental state. I'm focused on that. I'm like, I'm gonna age. So if I start really accepting and really using those like affirmations and just being like, I love you exactly as you are, like there's a peace of mind in me versus being so consumed of like how I look and how I look to others, right? Because I think it's a lot of like how I'm perceived.
Yeah.
And this allowed me to be like, I don't want to be at war with myself for the rest of my life. You know, I want to get when I'm older, like when I actually have like wrinkles that I'm like, I'm embodying it, you know, because I'm like, this is it. So like starting at this age, this young, already being like, I'm going to be changing and shifting. And I really have to understand and love myself. Like we take ourselves so for granted, you know? And like, for me thinking like, for me, like my thing is like, oh, I wish I had like smaller arms. I'm like, am I really going to be loved and look so different with smaller arms? Like it's so stupid. And like, how much do my arms do for me and my body and how beautiful it is? And it's also so perspective. Like I can be one day I can feel amazing or comparing, you know, it's just like, it's all perception. None of it is real, you know? So if we really rewire our brain to be like, I absolutely love you and thank you so much and see it from that, all those little things, like there's so much like other things we can we can use our energy and mind for, you know, versus picking at our beautiful bodies and ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's such a waste of our energy, you know, and while we could actually focus that energy on contributing our beauty that we have inside and sharing that with the world. Because for me, often it has kept me from sharing something, you know, like even these past few weeks having this acne, I was like, oh, I don't even want to make a video. I have so much wisdom to share, but I don't even want to show up on camera, you know? So yeah, thank you, body. I love you.
Yeah. And how much we can hold back from being ourselves. Like, you know, like, oh my God, a self-concern about how we look when what's on the other side is helping many other women wanting to get past that, right? So it's like getting out of our own way and knowing that we all deal with the same thing, you know? So it's not like we have a secret potion to be confident. It's really just acceptance and love. And I think she really put it in such a beautiful way. It's like, we don't have time to waste to go against like ourselves.
Yeah. Whoa, that's powerful. Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah. Then after that, she talked about the Avalon priestesses, and that chapter goes about meditation, you know, sacred silence. And it comes back to your intuition and actually the magic of the feminine, you know, like the feminine superpowers. And she also goes back into like past lives, you know, and like if you feel called to this, or like it could be that you were a healer, or you were you know, like even in past lives, you know. And I know that I feel called to this, you know, like to really help other women shine as well. And so it just gives me shivers in my body when I read that, and I'm like, I've been on this planet and I've had so many more magical superpowers, and now I'm still laying, you know, peeling layer by layer to show myself more so that I'm able to share these gifts with the world.
Yeah.
And so how can we exactly with Kuan Yin, you know, get rid of all of these layers so that we actually can be a priestess and be a healer and help other women? And as you already said before, you know, it's like come back to your actual like power and how powerful that we as women are, and especially in a collective and community. And yeah, to follow our intuition, what like we completely disconnected from if we follow the Western society, like the economic and societal structure. You know, it's all based on the masculine. But how can we go back to the wisdom of the womb, of the wisdom of our heart, you know?
Yeah. For me, like what you pointed out, like it was a very shocking thing to realize about how in the like back in the day women were killed because they like considered witches, right? And they were healers. And for me, like I put so much pressure on myself on like knowledge, and then like I judge myself for not being able to communicate properly, but I think because there's such a judgment that I don't know enough. And what I'm realizing is that like my wisdom, my intuition is my education. And I think all women, we all need to remember that. Like if we think we don't know enough, we do, you know, but it's like coming and trusting ourselves. You know, I see myself like I can speak more fluently when I like speak from the heart and just trust versus like I need to sound smart. I need to remember what I learned. I need to remember what I read.
Yeah.
And I think all of us, so many of us, you know, hold back from making a different, like wanting to show up like this, right? As a coach, or if you want to do Reiki or any healing thing, it's almost like, I don't have that, but we all do. And I think this was a beautiful chapter to remind that we all have this innate power.
Yeah. Yeah. And like even now, you know, like we're just having a chat and then you're speaking so powerfully. It's just when your mind gets in the way that you might think like, oh no, I can't do it. But then when you let go of that, you're like, oh, I'm sharing all this beautiful wisdom.
And with passion, right? Because it's like we all want to be, I think for this book, one of the things is like, it just allows us to see how much power we have and to give us permission to allow ourselves to be the chaotic mess like Kelly, and to be the crying, emotional, you know, all that stuff. So it's beautiful.
Yeah. And then just to finish up, the Avalon Priestesses is also when you go into a more holistic medicine, it's like how you see that actually they didn't, okay, there's been Ayurvedic medicine around for thousands of years, and now Western medicine comes in with like this masculine mind, and no, we need to prove everything, we need to scientifically have everything, you know, like measured and done. But it's not the way of actually Mother Nature, the feminine, what we are. Nature heals, you know. Wow, this is giving me shivers. It's like we are the creators of life, so we also have this innate wisdom in us to heal life. And you see that when you go into more holistic medicine, that they work together, you know, like you have Western medicine that's good for trauma, etc., but for prevention, or when you know that you have kids, for example, you always know eventually you got to come back to your mother's intuition, and you decide, you know, what's best for your kid. And no doctor in a white coat in a hospital can tell you exactly what to do, you know. And oftentimes we give away our power in that sense, instead of actually thinking like, okay, what do I feel like is better for my kid now, you know. And I'm not speaking about like extremely extreme cases, you know, but the more and more we start to tune into this, and the more we start to become aware of it, the more we can also help ourselves and others, like our kids, you know. It's like, okay, you start to be more aware of what specifics they need, or what specifics is good for them, or what. Yeah, but if we're cut off from this, we just think, oh no, I don't know anything what to do. Like, I don't know what to do at all, you know, and I just need to call the doctor. And like, so many parents are calling more and more and more, and they're giving the health of their own kid, putting it into like the life of their own kid into someone else's hands who isn't connected to the kid, who doesn't know them 24/7, who doesn't, you know, like all of these things. And yeah, just touching upon that it's part of the feminine, the healing, the energy, the creation, the life, the nurturing. Yeah, it's also a medicine, coming back to that model of feminine healing. Yes. Then she talks about Hecate, and Hecate is like the wise woman, the healer, like the older witch, you know, like the queen of the witches. And I think it's so beautiful because in that aspect she also talks about how beautiful it is to be a wise older woman, you know, and like how much power is in that, and how we don't need to stay youthful forever, but it's through going through all of these things that we actually gather the wisdom, you know, all of the processes that we gather the wisdom to then also help others and to be there for ourselves in a different way. And yeah, it's also, we talked about, I think a few weeks ago, how society nowadays maybe also separates more like the elderly from you know, from society, because they can't contribute anymore in economic goals, but there's so much wisdom for them to share in like life knowledge, you know. So it's like how can we implement them more into our life? Like, how can we share our life more with that? And I personally love spending time also with my grandparents, you know, because I'm like, oh, what about that? And you know, I love asking them questions, and they just have this completely different energy about them, because they're like all content. They're like, they're not chasing. They're like, there's so much more out of the mind and into the heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is she called like the crone? The crone,
Yeah.
or the lady?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's something that allowed me to also look forward to that, you know, to really embody becoming older and becoming wiser and becoming that, like, you almost at that point you're like losing your grip, like you're like, you don't want to, there's no more perfectionism, there's no wanting to be like prove to anyone, you know, it's like full like give and like relax. And it's like, wow, like you finally, I feel like you finally get it at that point. You're like, this is how easy it was supposed to be. You know,
it's so silly because our whole life the ego is in the way, or the mind is in the way. And not that the ego is all bad, but it's like you finally get it and you're like 75. Like,
yeah, you're like, fuck. Yeah. So I think these books specifically like give so much awareness, right? It's like we can have that awareness now and be able to build and accept all these archetypes within ourselves that make the process to age and to go through them a lot, not necessarily easier, but yeah, with more awareness, with more ease. Yeah.
exactly. Yes. And then we come to Aphrodite, which is beauty, sensuality, the art of life, you know. And it's really, I think, the combination of all of these goddesses that make you a complete human, you know, and you embody them in different moments in life, in different, like, in different amounts. But for example, now Aphrodite for me has been really important to get back into my sensual self and to step back after the Kali energy, you know, after like the releasing and the like getting back on top. It's also how can we create that magnetized energy, you know, that magnetism around us that actually attracts and that really makes us receive into our feminine, you know. And how can we express ourselves more with sensuality and treat ourselves more, because when you're like cut off from your womb, from your sensuality, oftentimes like there's might be that one of your chakras is blocked, energy isn't flowing clearly, and also the nervous system is really connected to how calm we feel it, if our vulva or our vagina or our womb isn't open, you know. Like it's really a portal for us to receive. And so how can we open it up, you know? And like how I've been now working with my crystal wands, you know, and like just opening that up and creating also that self-love and giving that to myself, because it's beautiful when you practice that by yourself to be able to receive that by the masculine as well. But it's really like that going through this stress and not feeling as good in my body. I noticed that I was closing up. You know, so how can I step back into my feminine sensuality and receive and open up and really help myself in doing that, and looking in the mirror and like, fuck, you look hot, you know, and like, what a good ass, you know, and like all of these things, just like turning myself on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when we talked about this book last, like you even suggested for me to like have a date with myself, and I got home and in front of like I started putting like music and like playing with myself and dancing in front of like a full-length mirror, and it was so beautiful, like putting like the best track and just putting like essential oils and an incense and like really like feeling that with myself, right? Versus like finding this sensuality out of like external validation, or if I look a certain way, maybe this is how it'll be attractive. And it's like, no, it's like feeling that juiciness within ourselves, right?
Yeah, I love it that you said, yeah, I remember that exercise, you know, from an also, and it's like dating yourself. Exactly. It's turning yourself on, you know, because if you're not turned on, like that's going to reflect in your relationships, or in finding it, attracting a partner, or in the relationship you already have, you know. So you need to really honor that relationship with yourself, and you need to feel sexy. And that's what I've noticed the past few weeks. I need to feel sexy in myself so I can also exuberate like that energy for my partner, you know, and attract him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there is Lilith, and she presents like the dark feminine essence, and she's always been seen as like someone who has come from the underworld. But then I didn't write down an example of how it has showed up in my life, and that's a pity, because I remember when reading the chapter I was like, of course, Lilith, you know. But it's you know, it's the yin and the yang, it's the good and the bad, it's the masculine and the feminine. It's you need that. It can't always be like happy bubbly, you know, and like toxic positivity for me, or like be a good girl. You also like need to step into your own power and show up for what you truly want, you know, and it can be light and dark. But I forgot how it showed up in my life now. Yeah. Anyway, I'm thinking if it's coming up. No. No. If I think about Lilith later, I'll send it through. Yeah. I just remember that it's not always like, as we say, you know, you have like Kali, you have Lilith, you need some of that refusal or like that friction in order to also blossom into these beautiful like light.
Yeah.
Goddesses, you know.
Yeah, I don't know if this relates or resonates, but like for me, what came up was like when I recently in a coaching call, I was kind of like going again. I was talking about my anger, and my coach had pointed out that like that there is pleasure in anger, and that there's something in me that does enjoy being angry, you know? So it's like these kind of like shadowy parts of ourselves that are also like enjoyment, you know? It's like we do benefit from it, you know, and when we're aware of it, we know how to navigate through it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's exactly what they talk about in Lilith. It's the anger, and how we as women have oftentimes, when I said like being the good girl is like this repression of anger, this repression of like keep people pleasing, you know, how to show up in our lives of being always like, oh yeah, okay with everything, you know, and like me feeling like my codependency, you know, with my partner, and then always like kind of going along. Well, no, I have to also listen to my own like my own wishes, otherwise I will have built up frustration or resentment, and it silences ourselves, you know. So we want to open up our throat, and we want to speak, we want to set our boundaries, and we want to speak up for what we want and what we need, you know, and like our emotions, our needs, as we discussed in nonviolent communication, you know. It's like these these negative emotions, they serve you, you know, like what is a signal that they give you, and how are you going to take action upon that? You know, it's nothing to be ashamed about. It's nothing that is not part of us, you know, like it's not because we are beautiful, gorgeous, hot, successful women that are gracious that we can't be angry, you know, like it's, we don't need to silence our truth.
Or be like scared of it. Like for me, when a part through speaking through the goddesses and how Sophie speaks, it's just like, oh, it's so powerful to be so raw. And like, I don't know who had told me, but like someone had really, a woman's partner had really recognized how beautiful they look when they were just like in their like anger and in their frustration. They're like, wow, just honoring the feminine, that it can be as so much depth, you know, and so much intensity, you know, and the other side there's also softness. So it's so beautiful that when we know how to how do you say, express our anger in a healthy way without shame, right? There's so much power,
Yeah,
and beauty to it, you know, because it's an emotion that we're all meant to feel.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then it's how we deal with it, you know, like do we keep it in and do we start gossiping about other people, for example, or do we recognize that it's anger and we actually heal that emotion and we actually like let it out and we push it out,
Yeah.
we scream it out, you know, and yeah, exactly. It's a chaos of the feminine. It's everything. We can't just be on one hand of the spectrum all the time.
Yeah.
Yes, thanks for bringing that anger. Like,
Yeah.
and then the two last ones. First, we have Mary Magdalene, which is one of my favorites, especially for the role that she has played or that she has been perceived as of, like in society, always being like the by Christianity or like the church, not Christianity, but like the church, always been put down and always been seen as like the one who's a bad girl, but she's actually such a powerful woman, and how she shows up not as a goddess but as a gateway to the goddesses, because she is the gateway to Isis. And then how she actually also in the story with Jesus Christ and their life, how she was actually the feminine parts. It wasn't just Jesus who is like the savior, it's also her, and together it's the twin flame, you know, like they are the masculine and the feminine, the yin and the yang, and they need to be together in order to be balanced, you know. And what they did with this patriarchy and the masculine society is like they only took the masculine part and the feminine part was like discarded, you know, or even shamed upon. And so I think that I love this concept about feminine and masculine energy and the inner masculine and feminine. And this weekend, we're going to talk about the inner masculine with our women's circle, which I love because I noticed that for me, I always love to be my feminine. But then without my masculine in my balance, I would be, for example, more codependent on my outer masculine in my relationships, and it would give away my power, or I wouldn't achieve what I actually wanted, what my feminine was deeply longing for. So now that my man has left me for 3 weeks, I feel like I stepped up in my masculine big time. And I'm like, it's so empowering. I really empowered myself to take lead and to do the things how I feel that they are right, you know, based on my intuition, take action on that, you know. And so my intuition is the feminine, and then the masculine is create, like making that reality in the world. So yeah, it's beautiful when you find more and more balance in them, and like it's an ongoing journey, because I know that I've been here when we were discussing overflow. I've already like gone through so much masculine growth, but I feel like for me it's still more and more balancing them out, and then not getting stuck in the masculine and the mindset in the head, you know, wanting to go, for example, with my partner to him and doing everything that he, you know, loves to do, that I also love, but no, coming back also and bringing that balance in the feminine. And that's something that we really need to do in society today, and really really honor our feminine, because the society today is already so masculine. So oftentimes we really need to focus on bringing more feminine essence, feminine energy into our life, and doing that by softening up, and doing that by, you know, nourishing ourselves with all of these other goddesses, you know, and like to really honor both. You like, you need the balance in our marriage.
In a marriage. Yeah. Yeah, for me, I had never seen my relationship with my inner masculine, even though I was very much in my masculine. So it was beautiful to have that awareness of like, wow, when I really nurture my masculine and I feel like my masculine can take care of me, my feminine softens. And then I don't rely on that from an outside of a masculine. I can receive, right? But it's like when I'm taking care of with myself from both sides, you know, I'm not either pushing it away or yeah, I feel like it really helped me with it personally, and then also how I navigate through relationships.
Yeah, yeah, that shows. The more you can play between those,
Mm.
the more balanced your relationships will be, especially with like that dynamic. Yeah, and then to finish off, I would love to discuss ISIS. Because ISIS is actually something that I've been going through this past month a lot, and it's healing the relationship with your mother, and which comes down to also honoring your independence, you know, and your own path, you know, like, because everything with the mother has to do with the self and like healing my mother wound. And that showed up for me this past month in being, you know, like wanting to get over my procrastination, you know, and wanting to take action based on my inner desires. And then what was stopping me from that, you know, like what was keeping me small, you know, and this codependency. I realized that this codependency that I was finding in partners, that the tendency to go to become more and more codependent, it was something, an energy that was created between me and my mom. So me stepping up into my leadership, you know, and me honoring my inner masculine, you know, and like not just honoring that, but fully living in it and embodying it, you know, it made me really cut some energetic cords and be like communicating with my mom as well lately. It's completely different, you know, and setting my boundaries and saying what I feel and what I want and what I just being me as an individual, and just honoring that I can't be her little girl forever, you know, because I want to be a beautiful, powerful woman who shares her wisdom with the world. So it's really that, yeah, growth in my independence. And that's been coming up for my, like, healing the relationship with my mother a lot.
Yeah, and like how much can be unconscious, right? Because even if like there you do have a good relationship with your mom, you know, there's just so much underlying there. So to like really see it in a different perspective. Like for me with my mom passing 13 years ago, even when I read this book, there was still so much healing. Like it's never linear, and there's also like there's another layer to heal. And for me, it was also like it gave me like there's always like a little bit of more freedom and more peace that can go with awareness, or like not knowing how much I'm like still holding on to. So for me, it's just been another chapter of healing and letting go, and like seeing the possibilities that my mom left me, like what she couldn't, like almost like I could see how maybe she wasn't aware of all these archetypes that we have, right? And it was like when you get stuck in these and she didn't know how to handle that, and like life got the best of her. And for me to be able to see that as a inner power and inner wisdom, and like breaking this pattern, like that's been going on for generations.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, and I also truly believe what she says in the chapter about Isis is like how I know that I break this energy with my mom and it's going to impact my mom because it's something together, you know, but even when she's passed away, you can still heal, and that her soul will still, you know, feel that, or like you heal generations past and generations, you know, to come. And that's beautiful. You are the creator of your own like lineage, you know, and yeah, you set a standard, or like you break the patterns. And especially in having kids as well, being a mother, you know, it's so beautiful that that we are taking responsibility and we are healing all of these things in ourselves, so that our kids, we don't carry them over into our kids. And
Yeah.
that's so powerful, you know, like imagine if they growing up with all like freed from all of these things that we've been healing
Yeah,
lifetime. How beautiful.
definitely. And just have the tools too. I think a lot is regardless, we're going to have, yeah, like struggles per se, but it's like how we navigate in the tools and the language we use and the support. You know, I think that's all very important and life changing.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Yeah, so in total, this book is always a beautiful journey, and I can't wait what it's going to give me the next time that I read it and how it's going to apply to my life then. So
yeah, I love it how you read it multiple times, and like I even got a glimpse, like I've already read it, and then when I was reading it again, just even the first chapter, I was like, oh, I wanted to like highlight everything, you know. It's just so wow, and it's like it applies in every phase of your life differently.
yeah, exactly. It's magical. Thank you, Sophie Bashord. Thank you, Susie, for joining me today, and I will see you in the group, and I will see you for our next book.
Yeah, I can't wait. These have been all so great. So thank you for hosting these and being so incredible.
Love you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye. See you soon.